Here we have a very interesting fellow, a guy by the name of Immanuel Velikovsky. Now, Velikovsky had an interesting philosophy. He wrote a number of books during the 50s, Earth in Upheaval, Worlds in Collision. He had a philosophy that anciently the world was interrupted from time to time as large comets would come by, the gravity of which would interfere with the Earth. And here's a picture of a book, Worlds in Collision. Now there's another fellow a little farther back in time than Immanuel Velikovsky. His name is Joseph Smith. And he says some call it a comet, some call it a planet, but it's the second coming of Christ. And it comes during Armageddon. Now here's a slide of that part of the world. Gog, well, that's Germany and France and those folks. Magog, that's up around Russia. And during the Battle of Armageddon, Gog and Magog and the Arabs are, actually America, we're not very friendly to them right now, are all going to be trying to wipe out the Jews. Now we have two witnesses, according to Revelations, that are going to protect the Jews for 3.5 years. Who are those witnesses? What is a witness? A witness is an apostle. That's somebody that has witnessed the Savior. Now they protect Israel for 3.5 years. At the end of the 3.5 years, they have power to shut the heaven from rains and do all kinds of interesting things. They hold off these millions and millions and millions of combatants for a period. And then finally, they are overcome. They're killed. Their bodies lay in the street for 3.5 days. There's big celebrations among the enemies of Israel that they finally wipe these guys out. And after the end of about 3.5 days, the two witnesses are resurrected. They're caught up and ascend up into heaven. And when this happens, the generals of the army get all shook up and they charge the city. Now, my point is, this is the time that the comet comes by that Joseph Smith is talking about and that Immanuel Velikovsky alluded to. Now, as it makes its loop through the solar system, it'll come close enough to the Earth that the gravity of this planet will, number one, and Zechariah says there's a day and a night and a day that does not get dark. Okay? The thing like the moon is reflecting light, but it'll be so much light that it'll be light all night. The gravity will cause the seas to heave beyond their bounds. Now you think the moon causes a high tide. What kind of a high tide is this baby going to cause? The seas will heave beyond their bound. Not only the seas heave beyond their bound, but there is a bulging of the earth itself. As the earth bulges, the Mount of Olives splits in two. Christ sets foot on the Mount of Olives, and the Mount of Olives pops in two, creating a great valley. And the Jews escape through this valley, and when they escape through the valley, their enemies come in after them. Now, in my understanding of this is the wine press outside the city. What's happened now is the comet sails by. The gravitational pull is not as strong as it was, and the earth that has bulged up, popped the Mount of Olives in two, settles back down. And the enemies now are inside this valley when the earth settles back down, and the wine press. It's the old Red Sea trick, only this time we use dirt instead of water. Now, the world has mistaken Armageddon for the time that the earth is, when I say the world, I mean the Christian community outside of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. They think that the world is cleansed by fire at Armageddon, and that's Christ coming to the world. In there, they do err. This is Christ coming to the Jews, and his coming to the world is a later event. But this is the winepress referred to in the book of Revelations. And again, the seas heave beyond their bounds. Here's some wonderful slides of what it would be like to see the seas heave beyond their bounds and what they'll do to the cities on the shoreline. The Dead Sea the Dead Sea is healed. Now the Dead Sea is about 1,000 feet below sea level. And in order to heal the Dead Sea, you've got to elevate the Dead Sea probably 1,500 feet. You could float in the Dead Sea because it's salty. You're buoyant. When it's healed, well, ordinary water, you won't float. Earthquake. The earth will be torn apart. There will be great earthquakes take place during that time. Book of Revelation says it's the greatest earthquakes the world has ever seen. And here's some relatively mild earthquakes that have taken place. Buildings destroyed. Now the main body of the comet has sailed past the earth, but then we get this tremendous hailstorm. Hailstones up to 70 to 100 pounds. They do not grow in a cloud. What that is the earth is passing through the tail of the comet, and the debris that's following the comet on its course around the sun, that's the source of the 100-pound ice cubes. Here we have some good-sized hailstones. They're nothing compared to the 100-pounders that are going to pelt the earth during that time. Okay, the final event, the second coming. This is Christ coming to the Jews. Years later, he'll come to the world, and the world is cleansed by fire. Now again, most of the world thinks that his coming at Armageddon is his coming to the world. It is not. This is the event that most people think of as the second coming of Christ, but it's not. It's his coming to the Jews. It's years later that he comes to the world.